So you get the question?
Yeah. So you're talking about the Knight Foundation grant? Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So the Knight Foundation grant was for a project called Verified Pixel. The idea was more and more people are capturing newsworthy events with their cell phones. Whenever news would happen, someone, not a journalist, would take out their cell phone and take a picture. And so the project idea was, how do we actually put in place tests that would help newsrooms verify if the content has been altered or if it was taken in the location purported? So the test that was built were basically ingesting lots of pictures and running through tests that would look at metadata. They would look at the EXIF information, they would look at GPS positioning, and they would look at some other image forensic tests to see if the actual picture in question had been modified since capture. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So is it a software-based solution that aggregates all the data that's available?
Yeah, so it was a software-based. So the idea was this would be something that would test a bunch of pictures, and it would actually tell you which ones are most likely original, rather than telling you what's been modified, because it's kind of counterintuitive, but telling you what's been modified takes too long. So the idea being, let's say 4,000 pictures would come in, and very quickly it could tell you if these 200 pictures should be trusted because they passed all the tests. So generally speaking, the image forensics tests were very fragile. So they erred on not letting the picture through. And so this technology would allow you to, again, look at lots and lots of pictures and find the ones that are most trusted very quickly. So it errs on speed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
How intensive is this software? I mean, what are we talking, minutes or to test a bunch of photos?
Yeah. Well, so the software doesn't take that long. The challenge that we ran into with it is it was based on several API calls, and each API call could potentially have cost, right? And so the challenge that we ran into when we did this project was incremental costs on those API calls, right? So the idea being, even if it costs, let's say for instance, there are large photo agencies in the United States that can ingest up to 5,000 pictures a day, right? If it costs even a penny per picture, that cost becomes counterproductive, right? And we did this project several years back, so some of those costs may come down, but I think the challenge that you're always going to run into is the robustness of the test with how long it takes for journalism. Because as you know, the speed of information today is so quick that as soon as something is reported on social media, on Twitter or on WhatsApp or whatever it may be, journalists want to be able to publish that information. Any time, whether it be 5 minutes, 50 minutes, 2 hours, that it takes them to verify that, unfortunately is a challenge right now, right? And so that's kind of the push and pull that you're up with today is everyone wants a silver bullet that allows complete verification in seconds, but we're just not at that point right now.
Okay, and so what do you think, what technologies are sort of winning the arms race, the ones that are intended for faking things or the ones that are intended for knowing what's fake?
Yeah, so it's generally a cat and mouse game, As the fakes get better, the technology to detect them get better, but they keep fighting with each other, right? And that's why, to be honest, on the highest realm of detection technology, they don't necessarily tell you what they're doing, because if they did, the people making the fakes would know, right? But generally speaking, this is something that's, I almost liken it to email. Back 10, 15 years ago, you used to get a lot of spam email, right? And today, you still get some, but it's a smaller portion. I don't think you're ever going to eradicate misinformation, but the idea is to bring it down to that small portion. So I think that's the real goal. I don't think it's ever going to go away. To be honest, it's been with us since the invention of photography. But I think the idea is how can we build tools that work to eradicate it down to that small subset.
what about the common folks?
Yeah.
And then average Joe
Yeah.
sees a news that potentially may be faked.
Yeah.
And is rather important. What can he do in order to?
So for everybody, I think it comes down to a couple things. I think it comes down to heightening media literacy. So being more questioning about, that image that came across social media, does it look real? Do I trust who it came from? Is it plausible? But then the other thing I would balance that with is the tools that I talked about today. Reverse image search, whether it's Google reverse image search, TinEye, or Yandex reverse image search, are completely free. So if there's ever a question, I think those are really easy go-to softwares that take seconds and don't cost anything. And so as people start knowing what's out there in that free realm, I think more and more we're going to be able to reduce that opportunity for misinformation to spread.
Okay. So, and you say it takes seconds to check whether an image is fake or not. And but people still seem to ingest fake images and news quite a lot. What do you think prevents people from questioning and from checking the facts?
Mm-hmm. Well, just to clarify, so reverse image search takes seconds. Reverse image search is only one step. It won't tell you like fake or not fake. It'll only help debunk. So if something happened before, and somebody's saying it happened today, but it's been online for 15 years, it's obviously didn't happen today, right? And so just to clarify, like reverse image search does one specific thing. But so your question was basically, so restate your question.
What prevents people from checking their facts more?
So a couple things. I think what's preventing people at this moment is sometimes they don't know about the tools. So that's what's great about what's happening today is letting people know what tools are out there. Sometimes it's people, in a rush to just share information. And sometimes, unfortunately, I even found out that it's people sometimes who don't mind. Whether it's fake or not, they don't care about sharing fake imagery because sometimes, they're more interested in the likes or the followers than the truth. So it's a mix of everything. I don't think there's one issue why we're still seeing more of this. I think it's going to be something, again, that really falls back on media literacy. It falls back on if people are more empowered to know about the tools and more empowered to ask the questions about, is this real or not? I think that's the way forward to make sure that we can make a dent in the problem.
Okay, thanks. And then, speaking of motivating people or encouraging people to check their facts, can you come up with any benefits they can have from checking their facts, or on the contrary, what threats can they face when they're being misled into believing in some fake news?
Yeah, so speaking of why people would want to do this, I think it revolves around trust and credibility, especially for people in the media. I think, reputations are built around trust and credibility. So I think that's one thing that media outlets can look at is they don't want to be seen as amplifying misinformation, right? So it's imperative on them, I think, to do verification workflows to make sure that they're preserving their trust in the audience. And for the common person, I think it's the same thing. I think, I don't think any of us want to be known as the person that continually puts out false information, right? I think you lose your personal credibility. Those are, I think, some of the driving factors. On the penalty side, I think, more and more, it's different by region, but people are sometimes making it, making laws against this type of thing. I don't necessarily think that's the way forward, but I think the best way forward is to make people have personal responsibility for the information that they're either putting out there or they're amplifying by sharing. So making people more responsible for what they're putting out there, because as we've seen in times before, sometimes misinformation can actually do actual harm to people.
And I think,
No, I have a general question.
Yeah, sure.
Why you started worries about this information? Why it's so big?
Why I started?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I used to work online before smartphones, and I think we started asking our users to send in pictures. And at that time, we had no real idea to tell if this was a picture that the user took, or if they took from online, or if if it's a professional photograph they were just sending in. And so when smartphones hit, everyone could take pictures. You know, smartphones were the shift where everyone had high quality video and a camera in their pocket. And so again, I go back to when news would break, usually now the first pictures you're going to see are not from a professional photographer. They're going to be from somebody who was there, an eyewitness with a camera. And I think my concern that got me into looking at verification is that's a huge potential for covering news. It's a huge opportunity, but it's also a huge challenge. Because when there's not professional journalists capturing imagery, we need to make sure that the image that's being sent was taken in that location, taken today, not manipulated. And so I saw a huge opportunity to say, how can we actually move forward and capitalize on the idea that everyone's got photos, but making sure that we still hold the veracity of journalism and making sure that this image is representing the event that occurred today.
Thank you. And ти способно советы рекомендации журналистам, как вообще работают, и советы людям, которые читают
Everybody should follow John's mock. No.
в целом типсы.
You're gonna be in this hot seat in a second, man.
And one more question.
Sure, absolutely.
Is there any data as for the damage or harm that has already been made through fake news, or any insights into the future, what it may end up in? What are we heading to?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have data on, I don't have data on the damage that has been an assessment of that. But I think, as we talked a little bit about today, I think the future, the concern I have for the future are things like the synthetic media that I showed. The idea that no longer, in the past, it used to be somebody who had to, work for Hollywood, or somebody who had to be very adept at Photoshop to make realistic looking fakes. Nowadays, you can literally buy a computer off the shelf with a certain graphics card and make the deep fakes that we showed today. And that, to me, is very concerning. The idea that the barriers to entry have been lowered to where somebody who is no longer an expert can make a very realistic looking synthetic media. And so I think moving forward, that's something that I think is going to be a larger challenge.